Jioplaygame!
Hi Alan, so could you give us a brief introduction about yourself, so who you are, what you do, and what exactly is Meta?
Sure. My name is Alan, and I'm the CEO of Meta.us, which is a really gaming-focused site, really meant for the eSports community. And yeah, we've been around for about a year now and launched the product roughly 2 months ago. Before that, I was with Blizzard for 6 years. So that was a lot of fun and learned a lot and got a lot of good loot too.
Okay, so what exactly does Meta do for gamers?
Yeah, you can think of it this way. I mean, I guess the story I would tell is when I was at Blizzard, we did a lot of our own esports. I met a lot of players and a lot of teams. And the question I would always get is, so how to become pro? And I think for like many of the team-based games, there are a bunch of hurdles that you have in order to kind of play competitively. The first is you need to find people that are your skill level to create a team, and then you got to find people to scrim with, and then you got to find tournaments to enter that are at your skill level, and then at the end of the rainbow, there's this dream that I'll get sponsored, and then you can play professionally full time. And that wasn't easy, right? My answer always was, yeah, how do you play pro? Kind of get lucky. And that didn't seem like a very good answer. And so we built this platform to kind of address a lot of those pain points. So just basically think of it as like a social network for gamers. You can create a profile, find other people to create a team, find other teams to practice with, and then ultimately find tournaments and literally get discovered, right? That's really kind of the tagline that we use internally and on the site is get discovered.
Okay, so what kind of games does Meta currently support?
Dota 2 is our first game, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll announce our second game title, which I think many of the players in Southeast Asia in particular will know very well.
So you described Meta to help players go pro. So as a casual gamer, then how would using Meta benefit me?
Yeah, I think, so the analogy I would say is if you ask any 12-year-old, for example, hey, what's your dream? And a lot of them will say, I want to play in the EPL, right? I want to be a professional football player. And at 12, everything's possible, right? So I think everyone dreams about going pro. Obviously, very few people actually end up going pro. But it's not so much that they want to be pro, it's that they want to have some path to go as far as they can based on the skills that they have. And I think right now for esports, it's the same, right? You have a lot of people who want to go pro, but what they're really meaning is that I want some sort of path where, if I'm good, I can get as far as I can get, right? With my friends, with my teammates, and that's what they're looking for. And so even if you're, say, casual, say for me, for example, I play a MOBA that is by Blizzard, Heroes of the Storm. I know I'm never going to be pro, but I often, I don't want a quick match or a random queue. It's pretty frustrating because you get people AFK and it's just a bad experience. So, like I would use Meta once we support Heroes of the Storm at some point, to actually just look for other people to play with. Like, look, I'm not a competitive player, but I want to find people I know that are of a similar skill level to play even quick match. So our platform enables that as well.
So what's the difference between this in that case and the matchmaking provided within a game itself, say for example Dota 2?
It's a good question. So the difference is one is with strangers and the other is proactively finding. So when you go on to, whether that's Dota 2 or you get on Battle.net or whatever it is that the client tends to support, you quick match and then it's a random, right? It's random team for your side, random team on the other side, made up of, for the most part, strangers, right? If you don't happen to have any friends that happen to be online at that point. And then you get random results. Whereas here, in our site, you go onto the platform itself and you can actively search for individuals that, say, are in the same country, on the same server, or play a particular role that you want to complement you, right? So I think, for example, a lot of the challenges that players have right now is language and server, right? That's really important because a lot of times people will want to chat in the game, right? Voice chat or even message chat. But if they don't speak the same language, it's kind of a non-starter. If they're not on the same server, well, then the lag is just going to be so bad they can't play together. And so rather than kind of waiting randomly on quick match for whatever that you get, this allows you to go, look, I know what I want, I know who I'm looking for, and I'm going to find that individual, I'm going to connect with them, and then we'll go in game, and then we'll have a much better experience.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so what is your current reading of the trends in esports right now? So how has things changed from say 5 to 10 years ago?
So I think it's changed enormously, as everyone kind of can tell. You can feel it. Like esports, I think, is now mainstream. And you can see how it's mainstream by a few things. You can see that the different types of brands that are getting in. You can see the news coverage that people are getting. You can see the type of, a lot of investments are coming in as well. The more interesting question is, how did that happen in the last 3 to 5 years, right? I think for me, there are 2 or 3 things that really kind of tipped it. This is from my own opinion, being on the Blizzard side and looking at things and seeing how it's evolved. I think first is that the game developers themselves have taken it more seriously, right? It used to be, for example, at game companies, esports was kind of fan service, right? They would hold a tournament because players wanted to play. They would do a prize pool, and just as a way of saying thank you and to keep engagement up in the game, which is great. But they never made any money out of it. It was a cost center. It would cost money. I think a few years ago, what tipped with a lot of developers is they realized, hey, this could actually be a business by itself. And Overwatch League is a really good example of that, right? So now they're treating it literally as a business. Just like, game publishing, they're now treating esports as like, hey, this is a revenue generating center. And once it becomes a revenue generating center, then it gets taken much more seriously. And also what that leads to kind of the second point, which is the type of investors that are coming in, right? When you're a cost center and when you're fan service, you're not going to get a lot of investment because investors want to return. They want to make money. Once you're treating it like a business, then investors start getting very interested. And now that you're seeing people like, again, using the Overwatch League because I'm familiar with it, right? The owner of the New England Patriots, right, bought an Overwatch franchise. The owner of Arsenal bought an Overwatch franchise, right? And they paid roughly $20 to $30 million for that franchise. These are really smart guys. They wouldn't fork over that much money if they didn't think that there was an opportunity there. And so the level of investors that are coming in, and with them, right, with that type of money comes expertise. They know how to run sports, right? They know how to do media deals. They know how to run teams from a traditional sports standpoint. And all of that expertise is now coming into esports, right? Which is actually helping a lot. So it's not just the money, but it's the quality and the type of expertise that's coming in. That's also making it, I think, esports really kind of grow as well.
So how is Meta planning to leverage on the upswing trend of esports that we are experiencing in Southeast Asia?
Again, there are a lot of examples, analogies that you can use with traditional sports. So the one I would always like to talk about is EPL. But you can take any sport, whether that be football or basketball or even ping pong, right? If a child or a young person asks you, I want to I want to play in the Olympics for ping pong, right? First of all, it's not a ridiculous thing to say because there is definitely a professional scene for ping pong. The second is there's a clear path, right? Okay, great. There's some coaches here. You can play for your school team, then get on the national team, and if you have the skill, you will play in the Olympics or you will play ping pong professionally. Esports, and not just in Southeast Asia but globally, doesn't have that discovery and development, right? Like I said, if a young person told me I want to be a professional player, right now it's still like, yeah, good luck to you. Maybe you'll get discovered, but it's all random. And I can tell you, for example, Man U, I bet they know who the top 20, 15-year-olds are in the world. I guarantee they know who they are, no matter where they are, whether they're in England or whether they're in Ethiopia, they know, right? Because it's their business to know. And they know that in order for them to be successful in the future, it's not about their current players, it's about the future. Their product is the players. And so they spend an enormous amount of time scouting, developing, managing, grooming, right? That type of talent. Esports needs that, right? And esports, and I believe this, is esports is going to be something that lives, for generations and becomes really mainstream. It needs that discovery and development of talent, because just like traditional sports, esports is, sure, it's about the game, but it's about the players as well, right? If you don't have quality players, high level players, then you don't have a sport. No one's going to want to watch it, right? If I can do what the pros do, then, it's not that special. It's when the pros can do these extraordinary things that I want to watch. And so Meta is really about that discovery and development. We want to help with the discovery and development that feed into all of these different leagues and games and pro scenes.
So what defines a sustainable esports scene in a country?
It's a combination of talent, competitions, and money. Right? You need all of those pieces coming together to make it a sustainable and vibrant one. And I think for right now, it's not the talent. The issue isn't talent, right? We know how many people play games, right? Millions and hundreds of millions of people play games around the world. In Southeast Asia, right, it's easily in the 10 to 20, 30, 40, 50 million people are playing games. And you have to believe that among those individuals, there's talent. In fact, I know it. One of the reasons why we built Meta is in the Overwatch League, there's one player called Mickey, right? I think he plays for Dallas right now. And we were fortunate enough to kind of help in his discovery. Originally, Blizzard had the World Cup. Thailand had a team, and the Thai team went up there. They became fan favorites because they had great attitudes. Mickey got discovered. He played at Envious, and then he went to Dallas, right? Mickey got lucky, right? Our team happened to discover the Thai team. We happened to get them to BlizzCon. How many more Mickeys are there in Southeast Asia? I would warrant a lot, right? So it's not talent in whether it's Singapore or Thailand or Vietnam, right? What you need now is opportunities for that talent to play, to develop, right? And the only way you can have those type of opportunities if there's money flowing in. So I think right now the other thing that is needed in almost every country, especially in Southeast Asia, is a way to connect the money with the talent and tournaments, right? We all know there's plenty of tournaments happening, right? Every week we hear about a little tournament, right? And we all know about these sponsors, right, that kind of want to get in, maybe want to get in, but the problem is they don't know they don't know the tournament organizers, they don't know the teams, they don't know the players. And on the other side, the teams, tournaments, and players, they don't know the sponsors. There's no connection, right? It's like this, right? So the question is, how do I match the money with the opportunity, right? And again, this is where, for example, Meta wants to play as well, right? We can be that intermediary between, again, if you've got this social network full of teams and talent and players, now a brand can go easily into one place and go, I'm looking for a tournament in Malaysia for PUBG Mobile. Great, I'm going to search for it. Whoop. Here's a list of tournament organizers. That's cool. And here's their contact information. And here's their tournament history, like all the tournaments they've ever done. I can check them out, right? Right now it's like, they have no idea how to do it, right? Unless that's it. That's the unique thing about esports right now, and we're all part of it, so we know, is that it's a small community, everybody knows everybody. But if you're not part of that community, you're not going to know anything, right? It's very hard to break in. And we have to make it more open, so that inclusive is the word, so that brands can easily find what they want and connect with the individuals they want. Because in the end, they have the money, right? They have the money and they have the interest in getting into esports. So it's just about connecting the two now. And then you're going to grow it. And you can see vibrant ecosystems like that. And Korea is a great example, right? You got the Samsungs and the big brands, SK, right? They sponsor teams, they sponsor tournaments. You've got the infrastructure like OGN, right? But that's because they've had decades to work this out, right? They have that infrastructure. Most countries don't have that, all right? And we need it in a bad way, so that we can kind of, up level and help with all that discovery and development I'm talking about.
Okay, so what kind of role does Meta see itself playing with regards to esports sustainability?
So like I said, I see us as kind of this way to bring efficiency to an inefficient market. Which is to say, yeah, it's kind of bring the people, the sponsors and the brands who want to get in and have the money, and map them with the people who have the need and the skill to execute, right? Tournament organizer, they're really great at doing production. They're really great at doing tournament ops. What they need are sponsors who can kind of fund that. And the same thing with the teams, right? They're training, they're managing their players, and they can put on a really good show, and they're very, very talented, but they need those opportunities. And so, yeah, it's like I said, it's kind of making sure that the different parties are all kind of mapped together. And I think that works very, very nicely in a social network.
So what other areas do you feel require improvement to have a sustainable esports scene in Singapore?
So much. You just go back again to traditional sports, and you think about all the infrastructure over many decades that they've put together. You've got talent agencies, you've got scouts, you've got coaches, right? You've got youth leagues integrated in with schools, right? You've got governmental or country and global level bodies that ensure standards, right? Yeah, all of those things, right, help contribute to a sustainable and vibrant ecosystem, right? And then you've got brands and you've got sponsors, and more importantly, I think the thing I didn't mention before, but I feel very strongly about, is people can make a career out of the sport. And because if I told you, for example, that your career is 5 years, right? You're going to play 5 years and then you go find another job. That doesn't sound very good, right? Like, that's not a career. That's like a hobby for 5 years. And after that, I'm kind of back to square one. Now, that doesn't work. But that's really how esports is right now in a lot of cases. Whereas again, in other sports, like, great, after my playing days are over, I can be an analyst, or I can be a coach, I can be a manager, there are all sorts of things you can do within the industry to continue in that industry, in traditional sports. Esports needs that as well, right? I think the other thing is the professionalization of esport, right? It's one thing to have a lot of passionate people and a lot of players. It's another to say, okay, a sport, like any other business, I need good marketing people, I need good finance people, I need a psychologist, physiotherapist. I mean, all those things that go around supporting teams, supporting players. Those are also opportunities for players after their playing days are over to still stay involved in the sport, right? So that you can honestly say esports is a career, meaning that you can spend 10, 15, 20 years in this industry. You can make a good living devoting yourself to esports, right? When you get to that level, right, then you have you have a sustainable business. You have a sustainable model, right? And I think, a lot of parental concern, you always hear about parents saying, oh yeah, I don't want my kids, I want them to study, and I want them to not play games. But if you drill down, my personal feeling, you drill down, why is that, right? Is it that parents hate games? No, a lot of them play games themselves, right? I'm a parent, I play tons of games, I don't mind my kids playing games. What they're really saying is that if they study and they become an accountant, I know that they can make a living, right? Whereas if they play games, I'm not so sure that they can make a living. But if you actually said, look man, you can get a degree in it, you can play, and then you can, blah, 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 and there are a lot of professionals in esports, and look, they're all making a good living, they'll probably say, okay, all right, I'm not so against it. It's just that they don't see a career there, right? And so I think that's one of the, barriers, but very solvable if esports, again, grows and becomes professional and, becomes like a lot of other sports.
So could you tell us some of the future plans of Meta should esports take off in Singapore?
I don't think there's a question of it taking off in Singapore, right? It's in my view, right, esports is now kind of mainstream. It's gotten the attention, and just by the sheer fact that from both the technology and demographic standpoint, it hits sweet spots, right? Look at the audience. It's millennials. It's young people, right? What brand doesn't want to, reach that audience? Right? And then the second is technology, right? Most of these people who participate in esports, they've got a phone, right? Or PC, and more it's going to phone, right? We see this in Southeast Asia. Mobile esports is really picking up, right? And that's the future, right? Portable technology is the future. So in both those ways, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, and it's really a question of where Singapore wants to play in that ecosystem, and how quickly whether it wants to be a leader or a follower in that. But it'll happen in Singapore. And I think, based on what I've seen in Singapore just in this last year, right, you can see that both the government and local companies are taking it much more seriously. They're putting investments. I think the challenge for Singapore is going to be finding that space. The challenges for Singapore is that it doesn't have a huge base population, right? So you're not going to fill, the national stadium with fans just based on the people in Singapore alone, right? Versus, say, a bigger country like Philippines with 100 million people, right? More likely, right? Just by sheer numbers, you'll do that. But does that mean Singapore can't be big on esports? No, it just means it's going to be in a slightly different form than, say, countries with different populations or larger populations. We really built Meta with the community in mind. Having come from the community, been part of the community, a gamer myself, and most of our staff are gamers. We like to think that we built something that's going to be useful not only for you guys but for ourselves as well. We all share the same ambitions as many of the players out there, and so let's just get on this journey together and make esports big.